up everyone? Thanks for tuning in to episode 1, all the sport. We're back here today at Parq for episode 2. So 1-3, 400 max buy-in. Got the chips ready to go. We're just waiting on a seat here. So let's get into it. So in this hand we stick the straddle on the button to $6. It's 4 limps ahead and we check our option with Jack 6 off. We go 5 ways to a flop. It's King 7-6 rainbow. There's $30 in the pot. Checks to us and we bet 15. I think I prefer betting 10. I like in these limbed pots when you're the straddler on the button, when it checks, you're just taking some small stabs. I'd expect the player with a king to bet out. So when check to us, I don't mind taking small stabs with some bluffs, and if we've any connection to the board, just try either thin the field or take it down now as a good result for us. The big blind calls and 2 of the early position limpers call. We go 4 ways to a turn, comes an offsuit 9, pot is now 90, it checks to us again. At this stage, 4 ways to the turn, we're pretty much done with the hand, so we just check back. The river comes out at Jack, we river 2 pair, and it checks to us again. Pretty confident now that we have the best hand. Villain in the big blind is shown to be a massive calling station all day, so we bet $50. Looking back at this, I think we could go with a bigger bet size, closer to pot, get someone to look us up, and the big blind looks us up with 9 deuce off. Pretty terrible call on the flop. Don't know what he's calling with. So given that he called with the 9 deuce off, I think we definitely miss some value by not betting close to pot on the river. But anyways, we take down the pot. So in this hand we look down at a very pretty hand, 6-7 of clubs. There's a button straddle on to $6, the 2 blinds limp, a woman in middle position limps, and we make it $30 to go in the hijack. She calls and we go heads up to a flop. It's 83 in the middle and the flop comes down ace of clubs, 10 of spades, 9 of spades. With our exact hand here, we only have 7 high, but generally this board is going to favour our range as the pre-flop raiser. We're going to have a lot of strong ace-x hands in our range. So generally, if the opponent checks here, which would be standard, we're going to start bluffing with this hand. We'll have a lot of strong ace-x here, so we want to find some hands we can bluff with. 7-6 of clubs, looks like an ideal bluff. We only have 7 high at the moment. We can turn an 8 for a straight, and any turn clubs gives us a flush draw, so we can start barreling across multiple streets. The villain, however, does not check, and she decides to lead for $20 quarter pot. It's an interesting lead because this is not usually a spot where villains would lead into you on ace-high boards. Generally, we have the range advantage here on the ace-high boards, and especially a quarter pot lead usually represents some sort of weak 10x, maybe a weak ace-x, a hand that doesn't want to face some big bets. It's an unorthodox play from the villain. I think we have a choice here between calling and raising. When the villain bets this small sizing, I generally lead to taking the more aggressive route and raising. The reason for this is if we have some strong ace-x hands, we're going to want to raise and get some value. And at the moment, with us having only 7 high, we don't want to just call, fold to a river. We'd rather take the aggressive route, take the initiative and start bluffing. So we go ahead and raise it up to $50. Maybe there's an argument for probably making it a bit bigger. The villain started the hand with $300 or so, roughly 100 big blinds. So I don't mind clicking it 2.5x, 3x, both seems fine. Go heads up to the turn, 8 of diamonds, and we drill the straight. Pot is now 183, and the villain leads again for $40. Less than 25% pot. So unorthodox again to be leading after I raised the turn, and for such a small size, I think it's just indicative of having a weak top pair, a weak second pair, and she doesn't want to face bigger bets. We have an easy raise here. At the bottom end of the straight, we're only losing to Queen Jack, so we bump it up to $100 and she calls again. The river comes, the 8 of spades. Not the best card. The flushes get there and sets make full houses. Although with our bet sizings, I think we can rule out sets altogether out of our range. Flush draws, however, by weaker players can definitely be played like this. But with 383 in the middle, I don't think we want to be doing any checking back. We want to just go for value. She only has $120 left behind, so we stick her all in when she checks to us. She thinks for a minute and lets it go, and we scoop up a pretty decent sized pot. In this hand, we pick up one of the most powerful 2 cards in poker, Ace King. There's a button straddle on, folds to the big blind who opens to $20. It's playing $500, and with the button straddle being on to 6, it's less than 100 bigs effective. She folds to us in the low jack, and we 3-bet to $60. The big blind calls. There's 130 in the middle, and we go heads up to a flop of 7-3-3 rainbow. Generally, as the 3-better here, we're going to have a bigger range advantage. We're going to have more aces, kings and queens, as these are the hands he will 4-bet pre-flop. He's going to have a lot of ace high hands, king high hands, some pocket pairs, some over pairs of the board that are like 8s, 9s, 10s. So given that we have the range advantage, I think this is a board we're going to bet 100% of our hands. I think we want to pick a small sizing, so we bet 40, just under 33% pot. He calls, pot is now 210, and the turn comes the 8 of clubs. I think it's the same as before. I think we're going to have aces, kings, queens, jacks, all these hands that we're going to be betting for value that can get called by worse pairs. So we want to have some bluffs in our range, especially when we have the range advantage. I think ace king is going to be a good candidate here. I think we're going to double barrel with our ace king, our ace queen, ace jack that we 3-bet as a bluff, some king queens. I think the turn doesn't really change too much, and we can set it up to shove some rivers. We're going to start putting pressure on hands that are pocket 9s, pocket 10s. If he has a hand like 6-7 suited, 8-7 suited, even though we block it, he's going to have to start folding these hands now. Even if he has a hand like 9s or 10s, we get to shove a lot of rivers and put these hands in an awful spot. Fortunately, we bet 110 on the turn, half pot. Don't think we need to go bigger. It's a 3-bet pot. We can probably arguably bet smaller to make the turn shove or the river shove bigger, but it gets the job done and he lets his hand go. Quick mid-session update here. We're just taking a break. Had some spring rolls. We bought into the game for 400, topped up 100, so we're into the game for 500 total. We've about 780 sitting on front of us now, so up about 280 so far. Table's pretty soft. We've one L-boy who just keeps getting in for 200, dusting it off, sharing the wealth with the table, which you love to see. And bar that, everyone else is pretty bad. We haven't had too many massive pots. We've just picked up some decent hands and just value bet against some of the weaker players. And we had a hand where we folded king queen top pair and we river the king against an old guy who I think had it. You'll see this hand probably after this. So yeah, let's get back to it. This hand under the gun opens $10. We call in the cutoff, king queen off, small blind and big blind won't call. I think sometimes we would like to 3-bet this hand, but I think against an under the gun range, especially when under the gun is an old guy who I haven't seen yet raise tonight, I think this hand is just going to function as a call. You could argue for folding, but I think in games these soft, I think a call is going to be the best play. We go 4 ways to the flop. It comes down Jack 10 of clubs, 7 of hearts. Checks to us. We have an open ender here, 2 overcards. I think this is going to be a fine spot for us to bet. We choose $25 as our sizing. Big blind calls and under the gun calls. Turn comes to 8 of clubs. There's now 115 in the middle. Brings in a 4-liner to the straight and the flush. I think we're just going to want to check back here. Take our equity to the river. think if we bet and get raised, it's going to suck to fold 2 overs and an open ender. It's also, we could be dead here versus a flush. I like bluffing if we have the king of clubs, maybe the queen of clubs in our hand. I think this exact combo probably wants to just take our equity to the river and check back and hopefully river a straight. River comes an offsuit king. We make top pair and under the gun bets 55. It's an interesting spot for him to bet 55 because he should have the tightest range opening from under the gun. He also doesn't really seem like the type of player that's going to bluff, and it's hard on this board to find too many hands that he bluffs. He might have flush. I think he's going to have ace queen a lot of the time. The check calls to flop, he's 2 overs in the gutter. Turn checks through when the 4-liner to the straight comes, bringing the flush, and then he rivers. He rivers not the nut straight because the flush draw is out there, but when it checks through, he's happy to value bet. So I think our king is never going to be any good here. I think in better lineups, there could be arguments if you have like the king of clubs here. This could be a pretty nice hand to turn into a bluff by raising. But at the 1-3 limits, you're probably just going to be torching money when you do that. And this combo, we don't have any clubs, so we're happy to just fold and let it go. Right, so buckle up for this one, boys. We're about to play the biggest pot of the vlog so far. So button straddle, small blind calls, early position calls. We bump it up to 25 in the hijack with jack 10 of spades. Cut off calls, button calls, small blind calls, and the early position limper calls. So there's 125 in the middle. We're going 5 ways to a flop. It's pretty decent. It comes jack of clubs, 8 of diamonds, 9 of diamonds. We flop top pair and an open-ended straight draw. It checks to us and we have a decision to make here. Do we want to bet or do we want to check? Although our hand looks pretty nice, we still have a weak top pair. I think generally as an overall, when we're 5 ways to a flop here, our range is going to want to do way more checking than we're doing betting. If we have a hand like pocket aces, pocket kings, board like this, it's pretty bad 5 ways for us. There's a bunch of 2 pairs out there, there's straights, there's sets. So I think as an overall, we're going to want to check these hands, use some pot control. So when we have a hand like jack 10, a hand that we can play, we can call it raise. I think it makes a pretty nice check. We don't want to bloat the pot too much here. It helps us protect our range when we have aces, kings, queens. We want to check some draws here. As far as hands we would bet, we'd probably bet like queen 10 for a flop straight. We'd be betting our sets here for sure, and we would be betting some of our stronger flush draws. Hand like ace king of diamonds, ace queen of diamonds, ace 10 of diamonds. Hands like this are going to make sense. It's hands we want to bet. So when we're checking, we want to check some of our over pairs. We want to check. We do want to check some draws. We maybe will check some of our strongest draws. But I think there is an argument for betting them. But we might check a hand like king 10 of diamonds, stuff like that. So we do have some flush draws in our checking range as well. So I think a check here is probably going to be the best play. The hijack bets 95 out of a 250 stack, cut off calls, and the button calls. We have a decision here. I think there's 410 now in the middle. We're playing about 500 behind. It's close because I think we could shove here. There's a lot of dead money in the middle. If we got all folds, we pick up a massive pot without showdown, although I wouldn't expect to get all folds. It's kind of interesting. The SPR is going to be so low if we just call. But I think with the outs we have, if we're behind, there could be 2 flush draws. There's a small chance we have the best hand. It's an interesting one. In game, I was actually really unsure what the right play is here. It seems kind of close. I think shoving might be an option. I think calling's also going to be fine. We still have top pair. We still have the open ender. Although our diamond straight outs could be dead now. It's interesting because button and the cutoff generally should raise straights here on such a wet board with the flush draw. They should raise straights. They should also raise their sets. So when they just call, I think it's definitely way more weighted to them having draws than having really strong value. You would expect a hand, if you pocket 8s, pocket 9s here, even a hand like Jack 9, Queen 10, you're going to want to raise. We decide on a call and we go 4 ways to a turn. The pot is getting absolutely massive. There's 5-15 in the middle and it comes to 4 clubs. An absolute brick. Changes nothing. It checks all the way to the button, who now decides to bet 350. He's about 105 behind, so it's interesting that he doesn't shove. It's a weird spot because the hijack who bet the flop, I think if he had a strong hand, he's only 250 behind on the turn with 5-15 on the middle. I think he would shove. I think he'd also shove some of his strongest draws if he had enough flush draws. So I think when he checks, it's probably a give up. Same with the cutoff. When he checks as well, I think it's indicative that he probably also had a draw that has missed on the turn. For the same reasons as the hijack, I think if he has a really strong hand here, he wants to bet the turn and get some value. There's a lot of bad river cards. I think also the fact he didn't raise the flop is also indicative of him having a draw. So it makes it interesting now to the button because there's a lot of money out there to be won, and when it's checked to him, I would expect his strong hands to bet. Although the interesting thing in this hand is why would he not raise the flop with his strongest hands? So when he bets 350, I think he could still have a hand that's just like the nut flush draw and just wants to take down the 5-15 in the middle. We have a pretty tough decision here. It's a big bet, but we have to call 350 to win 865. So we're getting a pretty good price. Don't think if we call the cutoff and the hijack are going to come along, unless they're playing very trappy or unless they have Queen 10 of diamonds specifically. I think our hand here, I don't really know what the right play is here, to be totally honest, because we still have top pair, we still have an open ender if we're behind. If he has a hand like 8-9, we have a bunch of outs. We can hit a jack, we can hit a 10, we can hit our straight. And if he has on the stronger hands, yes, we do still have some straight outs. But what the deciding factor in making the call, I think, came down to, can he still have the nut flush draw, or can he still have a hand that's just like King Queen of diamonds that has the straight draw to go with the flush draw? So I think given the fact that we can be ahead of all these bluffs with decent equity against some of his value, some of his strongest value should definitely have raised on the flop. I think we're here to film a vlog. We're not here to fold. We want to see some big pots, so we call the 350. Heads up to the river. It comes deuce of hearts, an absolute brick. We check and he bets 105 into a pot of 1205. Getting 13-1 on our money here. I think sometimes you just need to pay the man and look at his cards. We called him 105 and he shows 8-9 off for 2 pair and scoops $1,400 pot. It's one of the only hands that makes sense as a 2 pair for him to just call the flop. It's probably not strong enough to jam 4 ways or 5 ways on the flop. So yeah, well played by him for getting the value on the river, and unlucky to us. But that's how poker goes. We move on to the next one. After losing the biggest pot of the day, we're not discouraged. We reload again for the max, $400. We're now into the game for $800 and we're ready to battle and win some of this back. We open King 10 off, $15 in the hijack, and the big blind calls. Flop comes down 3-5-7 rainbow. It's $30 in the middle. This is usually a board that's going to favour the big blind's calling range, so when he checks, I have an easy check back. Turn comes a king. He checks and we bet $25. We want to size up close to pot here. We've just turned our top pair. We want to start getting some value. He decides to call. River comes another king. There's now 80 in the pot. We want to go big here. It's 2 hands after we just lost a monster with Jack 10. Usually people assume you're on tilt. So I want to look like I'm on tilt and I put out a bet $85. In game I thought pot looked good, but looking back on it now, I think an overbet is going to be the size we're going to want to use here. We're basically representing king or a bluff, and when you're polarized like that, you want to go with very big bet sizings. When you're polarized, basically means you either have a really strong hand or nothing, which leads to you wanting to bet massive sizes. I think looking back on it now, a size of 125 could be good here, get him to hero call. But in game we ended up just going with $85. He goes into the tank, looks at me, trying to decide, is this fella still steaming? I'm trying to sit there, look like I'm still steaming. I'm actually not. He looks again and decides to flick in a call. We turn over our trips and it's good to scoop a $250 pot. We're on the way to clawing back some of what we lost. Still early days, let's try to get back to even. And for the final hand of the vlog, we pick up aces on the button. We've stuck out the $6 straddle. Under the gun opens to $20, cut off calls, and we squeeze to 70. Only under the gun decides to come along. He's the villain from the King 10 hand where he was in the big blind and we river trips and bet just over pot on the river and got him to call. There's 170 in the middle and the flop come down. 7-6-3 rainbow. Another rainbow board again. We seem to be hitting them all day. He checks to us and we have a decision here. I think generally on this board he's going to have the nut advantage. He's going to have all the pocket 7s, pocket 6s, pocket 3s. Sometimes he's going to have 4 or 5 suited. I think I'd be more likely to check against a raise and a call in later position, but when he opens under the gun with the straddle on, he still should be pretty tight here. I think if this was a spot where we were button against cutoff, we can look to start checking back our aces and our kings, sometimes our queens. Just as is a board, he can start raising unknown. He'll have more 4-5, he'll have more sets, he'll have more 7-6 suited. So I think when it's under the gun, I think we're still happy to value bet here. We get value from some 7s, 8s, 9s, 10s. There's a lot of worse hands that can call. We have aces, the best hand in poker. Especially at the lower limits, we don't need to balance as much. So I think we are happy to bet and start getting some value. We decide on $65, just over 1/3 pot, and he decides to call. Turn is the 9 of hearts, brings in a backdoor straight, or backdoor flush draw, sorry. Board now reads 7-6-3-9 with 2 hearts. 10-8 gets there for a straight, 8-5 gets there for a straight, but these hands are unlikely. When he raises under the gun, calls a 3-bet, generally shouldn't have these hands in his range, but this is 1-3 poker, so any 2 cards are possible. Still, with that, I see no reason to stop betting. We're still going to get value from hands like 10s, jacks, so don't see any reason why we'd stop betting aces here. We want to set it up for a river jam. We bet 105 to 1/3 pot. There is arguments for just ripping the turn, as when we bet 105 and he calls, he's only 140 behind. It means we can start ripping our ace king, our ace queen, but I think the small bet is probably going to be better. Gives him less of a chance to fold a hand like pocket 10s, pocket jacks, which he might just let go to a jam. It means if he does call, now the river jam is smaller in relation to the pot and he might just put on his hero's cape and decide to call. So I think the bet of 105 is probably the better play here. It lets us also, we can bet our ace kings or ace queens at some frequency. I don't think we want to do it all the time, but we definitely do want to have some bluffs here. But I think we want to just be way more value heavy. Keep betting our aces, keep betting our kings, keep betting our queens. All these over pairs that can get value from worse. We want to just keep putting money in the pot. He calls and the river comes an offsuit 3. He now sticks his last 140 in the middle. There was 5-10 in before he stuck the 140. We're not doing anything else other than calling here. Still quite happy to call. When the 3 pairs the board, we now beat a hand like 6-7. So we call and expect to win most of the time here. We flick in the call. He turns over 10-8 of hearts for the nut straight and we lose. Not going our way today. We lose another pretty big pot. Don't think we can do much here, but lose our stack. We get pretty much cooler. It's unlikely. We can't really put him on 10-8 there. His hand makes sense when he calls. He flops 2 overs, a gutter, backdoor flush draw, turns to straight with the flush draw. So I think he's pretty happy how we played it. If he checks the river, I'm going all in anyways, so the outcome doesn't change. I think when he has such little left, we probably don't jam ace king and ace queen on the river because we don't think we're getting folds. But in theory, I think he would want to check that hand on the river because he's going to stack my overpairs anyways. Like if he jams, I'm calling anyways, and if he checks, I'm jamming anyways for value. So by checking, he lets me bluff sometimes. So I think he shouldn't probably be leading the river, but don't think this hand goes any other way. We're just always getting stacked here. It's unfortunate to run into this hand in a 3-bet pot, but happens in poker. When you play for a long time, you get used to losing. We decided we're going to wrap up the session here. We're pretty tired. We've been playing for a long time, and we're going to a Canucks hockey game for our first ice hockey game tonight. So let's wrap it up and head off. So just wrapping up the session here. We were in for $800 and cashed out a grand total of zilch. Rough session today. Think we played pretty well in most spots. Not too sure about the Jack 10 hand, to be honest. Could be a fold on the turn. Seems kind of close. We'll have to look into it more. And then the aces hand at the end was pretty unlucky. We've aces in a 3-bet pot, and he flops a gutter and a backdoor flush draw. Check calls the flop. I don't think we can do much there, but lose our stack. But that's how it goes sometimes. If you've been playing poker for a long time, which I have, you get used to doing the right things and not getting the right outcomes. Sometimes you do the wrong thing and get the right outcomes, and that's how it goes. So we're just going to wrap up the session here. We're heading to Canucks ice hockey game. We're just standing here in the outside BC Place. This isn't actually where the hockey is, it's in the arena beside it. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you for the next one.